Okay.
Engineering and stage friend are both ready to move on to Jacob's DM corner.
Absolutely.
Hey.
Okay. Do you want me
D-Smith's
to?
always come in packs of 2. Sorry, what?
Wow. Okay. Would you like me to read off the questions for you here? TQ has been. If anybody wants to ask a question, please put them in chat. Our comms volunteer TQ is going through and pulling them out and threading them for us.
Indeed.
So how about we start?
Make sure you
here?
start off with question and then colon so that TQ can pick them out pretty easy.
Yes.
And as previously mentioned, Kathleen, I just want to check with you. Do you want me to take over driving? while this
Oh,
is going
sure.
on?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me just do the magic wizardry to press the button and have the thing appear, and then narrate everything that is happening in front of me using my voice. And now I am driving.
All right.
Excellent.
I'm letting
fast
go.
driving all over the road.
Good luck.
Thank you, Kathleen.
So here's the first question here. How should I approach getting into a new mindset to write for a tone I'm not used to?
Music.
Yeah.
I straight up. One of the tricks that I always use is I go to Spotify, I find one song that I feel like fits the tone of the music of the thing that I want to write, the thing that I want to do, and I just put that on radio, and that will introduce me to an incredible amount of music in that same tone and in that same vein.
You could also... I don't listen to music as much, but I do love watching movies. If I want to write like an action adventure, I'll watch rewatch Indiana Jones or Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. Or if I'm if you're writing horror, go and watch a horror movie just to get you into that mindset. And then it also starts ideas flowing too. You start thinking about like, oh, that was a cool scene. How could I make that into a role-playing encounter? Yeah. Kathleen, do you have anything for that?
I try to, I don't know, I try to sort of get myself in the mindset of like the characters I want to do and the story. That takes a while to work into though. So that was good advice from both of you.
Oh, thank you. Next question here. How do you deal with something you've given your players, an item, a spell, etc., that's more powerful than you intended? Oh,
Give their
boy,
enemies
does
a second one.
I feel that in my heart because I've done that. I feel like every that's a rookie GM. That's a baptism by fire. Every GM has to go through at least once.
If they end up with an item that's too powerful, one, in my mind, it's important to at least give them the opportunity to use it at least once before something is done to balance it out.
Yeah.
If it's a mistake that you've made as a GM, like, oh yeah, sure, you find this thing, and then like 2 things down the road, you're like, oh, they're using that in wildly unattended ways. Oh no. Do something to flesh out the backstory of it. Somebody is coming for it because they have it. I always like to make it a choice. This was a old ancient wizard's thing, and they are coming back for it. They have taken a large plan-your trip, and they've just returned at a different time from whence they left. So for them, it's been thousands of years, but for the item, it's only been 3. But they need that thing back pronto. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I wouldn't recommend just doing like, oh yeah, like a gnome thief stole it in a night. Work it into the story. If you've put it in the story, you can do a whole thing and a whole side quest kind of centered around balancing that item out.
Yeah. And that's great advice. The other thing I would say is that if it really comes down to it, if you just can't find a way in game, you can also just talk about it outside the game.
Yeah.
Because this is a collaborative storytelling process. It's perfectly okay to sit down with your players and say like, hey, this thing was way more powerful than I intended it to be. Can we, tweak the numbers down a little bit so it's still got the same flavor but not quite the same mechanical punch, or try and find some way to balance it a little bit better. You should always feel free to talk to your players and work that sort of thing out with them.
Totally.
Not everything has to be handled in game in some way. It's perfectly okay to sort of break that fourth wall if it's making the actual gameplay worse for you. because you are a part of the storytelling too. You're here to facilitate their story, but you're also, if it's not fun for you, I've been in that position where I got a little over generous with my players' magical items, and I'm like, okay, folks, we got to do something about this. And it's not a fun conversation to have, but usually players are pretty understanding because they don't want you to be not enjoying the time either.
Communication outside of the game is key.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You could always make it so something small happens every time that they use it, and have that start building up and start them making them worried about using the item. Like maybe somebody starts to get a rash or something, you know. Like this requires that they have that item for a while, that you're willing to draw it out over like a while too. But I think after 4 or 5 sessions of that, they wouldn't touch it.
Just do a really menacing like save roll behind your screen, and don't tell them why every time they use it. Just really work up that it's a very threatening thing, and then let them wonder and get more and more scared.
Sorry to cut you in. This is Dale's technique, right?
Yes.
He gives you a magical item.
Who's
There's
Dale,
like
for those people that may not know?
Oh yes, Dale is like my RPG running mentor. He runs games on the Loading Ready Run channel, and he's been running games for, I don't know, like 20 years at least, probably longer, 30 years since he was a teenager. So like he's very, very, very good at running games. And whenever you get some sort of magical item, the instructions is like, when you use this, roll a D100. Tell me what the results are.
Oh boy.
I really love the idea of unintended consequences, or just like, there's a price you're paying for using this. You don't know what it is yet, but there is a price that you're paying every time, and eventually you'll figure that out.
And you know what? You don't have to necessarily have that price defined. Your players can define it for you based on how they use it. So you can just go thoughtfully, the first few times.
Yeah.
Kind of like opening a book.
Yeah.
And waiting to see. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was making a baseball reference.
Yes. Yeah, opening the book and seeing what happens. Well, because that's the thing that appeals to me about Blaseball, that I think is a major portion of the DM stuff, is that the game is a conversation.
Yes.
Between the dungeon master and the players. And I've been hearing that a lot in the answers.
Okay, so next question here. Suggestions and advice for making their first campaign. How detailed do you get into world building when starting a new campaign? How do I avoid overbuilding my world and overwhelming my players?
So one of the things that, especially, there's a couple of different ways to approach it. If you are playing in an established continuity, like Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or any of the already established campaign settings for example, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or any of the other very fun role-playing games that are out there, you don't have to go bananas with it. You absolutely don't have to go super, super detailed. One of the things that I always keep in my heart is you're going to care a lot more about your world than your players are. The players are going to care a lot more about their characters than you are. So make sure that you're aware that you're not just like, and now a monologue and a conversation between 3 NPCs. You have to be very careful of that and very, very aware to balance the level of detail. I always write way more than I need to because that makes me happy and I know what I've got in my heart and I've got all this stuff click-clacking around in the background because that's satisfying to me. But I understand that my players don't necessarily need all of that information, but it's there if it interests them and they want to go after it. I'm trying to keep my answers kind of short.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And again, with any new campaign, the advice of Whoa, Andrew,
Sorry, I was just trying to clear the data mosh.
And it worked. Yeah, the advice of starting small is always very good. And the other thing is, like, if you're worried about overwhelming your players, you can. That's pretty easy to drip feed that kind of information. And you can set it up in ways that where they can go after it if they want to.
Yeah.
You can leave a newspaper sitting, on a tavern table when they go and sit down. they want to pick it up and start thumbing through that, you can give them bits of detail about what's going on in other towns in the world and start fleshing it out that way. If they don't care, they don't touch it.
Yep. Also, nothing wrong with using pre-made modules. Nothing wrong with that.
Literally the only way I play D&D. I've tried writing my own campaigns and it did not go well.
Yeah, and you just take them and you just customize it to the characters and the players that you're playing with. Yep, nothing wrong with that.
Oh no, they're fantastic.
How about you, Kathleen?
I'm a big fan of the community announcement board.
That was very good.
Form of. Mostly because I like writing box text. But no, I don't know. I have an outline. And it's just like, obviously, this goes to this, goes to this, goes to this, but there's no way for the players to ever find out all of that information at once, right? You know, so, like Erica said, maybe there's a newspaper, you can go to the library, or there's a character you can talk to, and, there's some stuff you can ask about, and they'll point you to someone else. But, just like in real life or in video games, it's very hard to get everything at once. So you don't need to worry about being obvious when you give characters some details, right? You can give them a couple of things. They can be like, oh, we have some names, but those people aren't here. And we can go talk to them later when we get to the town that they're in if we want to follow up on that, but we don't necessarily need to. You know what I mean? And they'll discover it some other way or something, or not get to it. Who cares?
Yep.
You'll rename that Duke and then put them in another town, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Just, they didn't go, just slack a new paint, throw them over there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not something like that obvious, but
It sounds
have,
like the Dungeons and Dragons version of the Truman Show.
It is. Yeah, Andrew, I hate to break it to you. Dungeons and Dragons is one giant Truman Show. It's
fair point.
That's pretty much it. I've had times when my players went south when I expected them to go north, and I'm like, okay, you're moving down here now.
Oh, it just passed by, but sorry, I just wanted to highlight it real quick that the most recent donation before this at the bottom was Lunic1 saying, thank you for looking at my toilets. So I guess that's who submitted that challenge.
Thank you for sending the toilets, Lunic. Paul's dad sent me an original Thomas Crapper toilet. He emailed it to me. He's like, I have a menacing toilet.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I was like, woo. Of historic value, I believe.
So here's another question here. What is the character archetype you're sick of seeing?
None.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think they all have value.
That's not a spicy answer, but
Yeah.
none. I want my player to play the kind of character that they want to play.
I will give one. There's one character archetype I find can sometimes be hard for a DM, and that is the very taciturn, low charisma character. They're good every now and again, but I've also run campaigns where all three characters were that character. I'm like, you're not giving me a lot to work with here. And it can be very difficult as a DM to role play with characters that are like that. So it's possible to do, but as a player, you just have to remember that even if your character isn't going to be one that talks a lot, you do have to still do some talking so the DM can actually help you flesh out the character.
May I suggest a question that helps at least helps me circumvent that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
I ask the player, why do you want to play that character? That's it.
Yep.
It's not an accusation or anything. It's give me this information. Tell me why you want to play that character. Because sometimes the genuine thing is, I want you to build a world fantastic and wonderful and complete. And then I want to no-sell the whole thing. And that's what they want to do. So if that expectation is set ahead of time, then you might actually be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kathleen?
I don't care as long as people are happy.
Yeah.
I've only ever run boutique campaigns, so the characters are always designed to fit in the campaign world, but whatever the person wants to do, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not that I don't like those characters. I think they're great characters. I've just had some times where I'm like, somebody please say something. Somebody please speak to this NPC. Here's one that I'm going to ask because it is one that I have dealt with before. How do you use insight checks effectively as a DM? I have a house rule.
In Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition specifically, right?
Specifically, it
Okay.
seems to be what they're implying here.
Okay.
I have a house rule where my players don't get to ask to roll insight checks to see if a character is lying. I tell them if they think a character is lying, they, in the game, should act accordingly. I don't give them that, like, get out of jail free card of, well, I rolled a 20, so I definitely seen through everything this person believes. And I've found that works fairly well. I sort of see insight as being one of the DM skills, where it's there for NPCs to counter what players are doing as a way of abstracting that. Because obviously, I, as the DM, know that the player is lying.
Yeah.
Usually. But I will sometimes let them do it if it makes sense or if there's something I can't convey. But if I tell them, if you think they're lying, do something about it.
Yep. I run it a little differently as far as insight checks go. Is if they can, if I don't tell them what the DC is, but if they beat it by 5, they're so good at cold reading that, like, I've met people that have done this and have been able to do this in real life, and it's absolutely incredible. So if for me again, if somebody can beat the DC by 5, free pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Let's see. Jacob, any tips for vocal warm-ups and exercises to help audibly differentiate characters? And this also applies to Kathleen as well.
Yes, just very, very quickly, without going way down the rabbit hole, do celebrity impressions badly. Or put like a pencil in your teeth, or just move your tongue to the side of your mouth to kind of get different voices. There's also, have your voice come out of the top of your head all the way down to where the deity stitched you. That's called the apparatus. So if you can imagine your voice is coming out of a different level in this line, kind of up and down your body, that helps.
Yeah. Also, if you don't feel like you're good with doing voices, you can get a lot of mileage out of just like the speed and cadence of how you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, speed up for some characters, speed it down, slow your voice down for other characters. You can get a lot out of that.
Yeah. And you don't need to be a professional performer to enjoy your time at the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I may cut in here just briefly, Erica.
Absolutely.
With a quick commercial break, because we have just cracked $725,000.
Yay!
Ooh.
Courtesy of those $6.03 donations. There are 5 minutes remaining, less than 5 minutes according to that timer down there, for your chance to win a Magic the Gathering 2015 foil uncut commons sheet.
Yeah.
Generously donated to us by Card Kingdom. Get those $6.03 donations in, any multiple thereof. We are going to run this for another 5 minutes, wait a couple minutes for stragglers, and then draw the winner.
Heck yeah.
Thank you for listening to this commercial break. Back to your regularly scheduled DM corner.
If I have some voice act, so I feel bad saying I'm giving voice advice when Jacob gave voice advice, but your body language can really put you in the mind of a character. So you don't have to do an amazing voice if you know. So if you're doing like an old man, you can just kind of breathe out while you're talking, and you can hunch over and you can say, "Oh, welcome to the Forbidden Library." And it's not hard, but it's effective. And if you're talking to a real jerk, you could like even put your feet up on the table, knock over a coffee, and like sort of put your arms behind your head and say, "Hello, what brings you here?" And then, there's not a lot of voice acting, but you certainly get the character of what you're trying to play.
It doesn't matter if I'm in the booth or not. I'm still doing a full body performance as long as I don't slap the mic. Like, in 1,000 subtle ways, your body language changes your voice tone. That's Yeah, that's perfectly valid. It's not like voice acting isn't always like, okay, now I'm going to do this and then like if anybody's ever seen any of the videos I've done, it's still a full body performance. I'm just focusing most of it on my voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Knocking over the coffee is critical, though.
Absolutely. Yes. No. That's a key part because that's what a real jerk would do. What are some good ways to break the ice with new players?
Oh, flatulence.
Sorry, say that again?
Flatulence?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
Just straight up flatulence.
Yep.
I just said flash dance.
No.
Like, what?
Yes, absolutely.
What a feeling. Okay.
So breaking the ice with a new player group, for example, it is you are all at the table. You already have something in common. You're here for the game. Ask everybody about their favorite character or what kind of person you wanted to play. Talking about the game is a great way to break the ice and just asking questions because you already know what you're all there for. Hey, that's a cool dice set. What dice did everybody use? You know, oh, why do you have that? Oh, cool. Very nice.
Yeah.
This is why I've got mine. It's easy. You've already got things in common. Well, maybe not easy. I mean, there's people, different levels of social skill, but that would be a recommendation is ask questions of things you're interested in. You already have one thing in common.
Yeah. Or if it's the situation where you're meeting, say, at a con or something, and they've brought characters to this table, ask them, it's like, what is your character? Tell me about your character. Because people usually spend a lot of time working on it, and they're happy to talk about it. You will never find a D&D player who will not tell you at length about their character.
Correct.
You spend so many hours a week in their head.
Exactly.
So what do you think we got time enough for? Two more questions?
2 more questions? Yeah, that's perfect. We have 2 more questions on this list.
All right, great.
How do you spur players to commit to a course of action when they seem lost in choice paralysis?
I try not to get my players into a situation where there is choice paralysis, but it will always happen because players try to take and create opportunities for themselves 9 times out of 10. Player brain is a hell of a drug.
Yep.
It's if they're stuck in choice paralysis, again, communication outside of the game. If you folks are stuck, you can do it in like subtle ways in the game and just have somebody come along and give them no choice but to follow this course of action, or at least the course of action they most likely seem like they're going to take. Or you can just be like, hey, we're just going to stop the game. Let's take a top-down view of what's going on right now. What information do you have? Okay, based on that information and this new perspective, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
And then drop back into the game, and hopefully they'll be off to the races in character when you have that conversation out of character.
Yeah.
So the answer is not Jeopardy music.
No.
Definitely
Although-
not, no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Just got
But also
excited.
giving them in-game stuff like, for
You got me
example,
with that one, Carrie.
the sounds, but the sounds of, say, approaching bandits getting closer and closer can sometimes be enough to be like, oh, time to make a decision. Here's one. What's your favorite way to best bring the physical world digital for players with all that is going on in the world, like favorite apps maybe?
I swear by if I am running Dungeons and Dragons, I will swear by D&D Beyond from now until the end of my days. I love that program. For others, I enjoy Roll20 very, very much. But a lot of times, because I have smaller groups and I only run once a month, we do a Zoom call and we roll the dice and I trust my players.
Yep.
That's
That's,
pretty much it. Like that's what I do.
Yep. That's also exactly how I run my D&D games because I only have 3 players as well.
Yeah.
We just do a Discord call. Everybody rolls their dice.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that. As long as everybody has the books and things like that. Kathleen, have you done much online? I'm not sure.
I did a bunch of campaigns with Loading Ready Run, but I haven't run a campaign completely online. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting to run the upcoming campaign for Loading Ready Run was an absolute delight. I'm looking forward to that coming out.
Nice.
Yeah, cool,
That's really exciting.
excellent.
Okay,
Okay.
that's pretty much at the end of our list of questions, and that was a good DM corner. Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you. That I enjoyed that very much. Now, for people that may not know though, because we just kind of like rolled into this, what Erica, how long have you been running games? Like what's your tie to tabletop games?
I've been running D&D games pretty consistently for about 4 years, going on 4 years now. And sort of on and off a little bit. I've been interested in D&D since probably the early 2000s. But didn't play regularly up until a few years ago when I started. I got a group together online of, actually at the time, they were mostly strangers that I just pulled together from a fan Discord.
Cool.
And started playing a game that way.
Nice.
And actually ran through we ran through all of the Out of the Abyss campaign for D&D 5th edition. Took us about two and a half years to get through all of it. And it was a lot of fun.
Is D&D 5th Ed your primary system? Have you tried any other systems or any other settings?
It's the main one I play. I've dabbled a little bit in some other ones. I've run a few sessions in Star Trek Adventures.
Neat.
Which I love Star Trek. That system's a little rocky, but it's just so much fun to get to fly around and do Star Trek stuff in space.
Cool.
And I have the Vampire the Masquerade book, and I would like to play it at some point, but I feel like I haven't gotten quite there with that yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you need to, I know a guy that's kind of into it. If you want to talk to him.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
I didn't know that there was anybody out. You know, just in the
I
general
can put you in
public.
touch. It's not. I don't know much about it, but yeah. How about you, Kathleen? Is it primarily 5th edition for you, or?
I've run exactly 2 campaigns in my life, and they've both been in 5th edition. But I think the next game I want to run a paranoia game. I've played a lot of different systems.
Nice. How about Andrew? Do you have any connection to the tabletop? You'd mentioned you didn't get to really play much, but.
I used to play a lot of White Wolf when I was a teenager. So I was in some long-running vampire and werewolf games with friends in Prince Edward Island. I learned the Mage the Ascension system. I think it was 2nd edition way back then. I've done very, very little actual Dungeons and Dragons. I believe I did a one-shot D&D session that my DM wished I hadn't. Or at least wish I hadn't named my character Sasha Grey. But that's beside the point. I don't do tabletop RPGs that much, but I did really enjoy them when I was much younger, when I was a teenager. I just really struggle with weekly or like bi-weekly commitments.
Yeah.
It's very rare for me to be able to do anything on just like a regular schedule like that.
I only do games once a month, pretty much.
Yeah, it's the same reason basically I quit WoW rating is I was just like I can't do a thing every week.
Yep. Absolutely. How about you, Carrie?
I started with 3.5 with Pathfinder in the mid 2000s in a campaign that one of my brother's friends played or ran, and I've done a few campaigns in 3.5. I've done, I think, 1 or 2 in like a short session in 4, and maybe something in 5.
Cool.
But then also we've Daniel's been looking into the powered by the apocalypse stuff, and we've run several, like maybe 4 sessions of a game built out of powered by the apocalypse called No Country for Old Kobolds.
Cool.
And it's very good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you get to watch your kobolds get just churned through.
Awesome.
Very fun.
That's very cool.
Nice.
But only a player. I've never tried to do what you 2 do. You 3 do. Heck. Nope.
Yeah. Well, D&D 5th edition is a really, really great entry point into things. But I would encourage anybody here and anybody out there in chat. There's an entire world of tabletop out there. So if you don't find something that's your flavor, you're gonna find something out there to savor.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your time and attention. Now, I see up there, Andrew. we hit. I think while we were doing that, 725.
Up here? Up in this zone?
Yeah, up there. Yeah,
Up there in that zone. I think we hit $725,000 here.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Desert Bus Chat, thank you so much.